You've tuned in to I Am Not a Number Live, the review show with Cardinal Sin and Captain Cockney Spock, where we review a different episode of The Prisoner starring Patrick McGoohan. Each week, we discuss a different episode and its implications then and now. Follow along and make sure to catch the episode in our viewing order so you can be ready to ask questions and participate in the chat. New episodes premiere each week on Wednesdays from 3 to 5 Central. The show's surreal and political implications on the reduction of the individual to a number have an even more insidious impact today, as all of our information, phone calls, texts, likes, photos, and other data are harvested to be sold and turn us into product rather than consumers. Get ready for a deep dive into one of the most important shows to have an impact on pop culture and society ever. And remember, I am not a number.
Greetings, followers. It is I, Cardinal Sin, and I am here today with Mr. Rick Davey of the Unmutual website. Hello, Rick.
Everybody. Hello, Cardinal Sin. Nice to be with you again. Nice to see so many people joining us again today. Lovely to be with you.
Good to see you as well. And I just wanted to get a couple of things off the top of my head. I've decided not to watch The Prisoner on Amazon anymore. The Blu-rays are clearer, crisper, and have no commercials. And commercials really put me off, especially the way Amazon does it, with hardly any concept of where the commercials go. And the commercials are longer than they would have been back in the day. Plus, watching anything on streaming compresses the signal, and even though it looks good, it just doesn't look as good as the physical media. Another thing with this episode, the general, just off the top of my head, this episode predicted remote learning. Also, I noticed they're using punch cards, but metal ones. And instead of programming with punch cards, the professor just types out a page and then inserts it into a telex machine that looks remarkably like a miniaturized fax machine. Also, did you notice that the professor's wife wears no number? She wore a brooch, but no number.
She did. That implies that they were they're not prisoners. They were, and I think she says at one point, "We came here voluntarily."
Yeah.
One was what their motivation was. But I think it becomes clear throughout the episode that the professor is not all that he seems.
He's not there voluntarily, yeah. Or not anymore.
No, he may be to begin with.
The colors are brilliant. It's an outstanding remaster. You really have to hand it to the network here, the unsung heroes of why The Prisoner lives on for us to do a show about. Not only is it arguably the best TV show in history, but now perfectly preserved in HD, brilliant 5.1 surround, and able for generations more to see it. Yeah. I only hope network do get on to Danger Man soon.
Yeah, I echo those thoughts. They have done some episodes of Danger Man, but I think it's kind of stalled in the process. But let's hope that they get round to the other episodes soon, because it would be great to see those in the clear high definition that The Prisoner said. I agree with you. Wonderful transfer. They really have done a fantastic job. It was worth every hour that they spent doing it.
They don't have to colorize it, No. But, it would be great to have Danger Man remastered. I do have a little show and tell about stuff that I got from the network website. And I don't know if you know this, Rick, but I've always been an Anglophile, so I adore this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. I can't wait to see what you've got.
Well, let's take a look. So I will make myself big for this one. How do we do it? Yeah.
Beautiful. The gatefold vinyl selection of pieces of music from the Prisoner soundtrack. Beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
Music by Albert Elms, Robert Farnon, Ron Grainer, and Wilford Josephs. And as you say, it does open up into this beautiful gatefold, which I'm hopefully making it so there's not too much glare.
No, we can see that clearly. Yeah, I'm pleased that it arrived safely. One often worries about sending vinyl over long distances. It can,
No, this was in perfect shape when it got here. There's a little tear in the spine, but that could have been, since I got it. And that's on the back. And let's see. Having managed 3 record stores, I'm kind of a bit OCD with putting the slipcovers on. This one's a little hard to do. It's got a bigger back than it does a front. And that's not all. If I can get this on. One doesn't want to mess up either end.
No.
Too precious. And I also got this.
Good choice.
From
Have
the
you
network.
seen it yet?
All Night Long.
Have
This
you
is
watched it yet?
Patrick McGowan's jazz interpretation of Othello.
Great movie. He's great in that. Have you had a chance to see it as yet?
Actually, no. I sent back the player that I had that was multi-region because it said it was a 4K player, but it didn't play 4K.
Oh.
So my multi-region ability is gone. However, I will be getting another player soon.
He had a bit of a relationship with Othello because the only movie he ever directed was a film called Catch My Soul, and that was a musical version of Othello. So he had a bit of a sort of relationship with that particular play over the years.
Interesting. Then, of course, I'm a big Tim Curry fan, so I grabbed a copy of Blue Money.
Oh, yeah.
Which I've never seen. I have no idea what it's about, but it looks great.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really looking forward to that. This one, of course, is a Region B disc, so I won't be able to play that until my new player arrives. And always been a big fan of Stephen Fry.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we got Absolute Power.
He did go to town on the network website.
All of it on the network website. Yeah.
Great.
Fucking brilliant. But don't stop yet. We have an audience with Dudley Moore.
Oh, great.
Really nice. And an audience with Billy Connolly.
One of the funniest hours of viewing you will ever have. I remember watching that when it was first broadcast, and
there would be no stand-up comedy if there weren't Billy Connolly.
Tears rolling down my face the first time I saw an audience with Billy Connolly. The first time I saw that.
That's great.
Absolute genius. But it's interesting that you mentioned the vinyl there included several different composers. Robert Farnon, Wilfred Joseph, Albert Elms, and Ron Grainer. I wonder if you could tell me what you think.
An escape key that likes to take me out of my own show.
Yeah, I wonder if you could tell me what you think this might be. I've got a show and tell. Being that you mentioned it, I know it was within easy reach.
Here, let me make you big this time.
I wonder if anyone can tell me what they think this is.
Can you center it in the frame? It looks like a reel.
Yeah, it's a reel of Scotch magnetic tape, and you think, well, why is that important? Well, I turn it around.
What's on it?
The original master tape of the first version of the Prisoner theme tune.
Oh, wow.
Robert Farnan, who went on, his theme wasn't chosen. As we know, we ended up with a Ron Grainer version. But some of his music
I did see his
original.
I did hear his opening on the extras disc, which was a DVD that had the alternate version of Arrival.
Yeah. And but that's the original master tape, which Eric Myville, who was the music editor on The Prisoner, kindly let me sort of look after. And then I have another one. This is a Zona tape, whatever that means. But this is this is roll 9 of Albert Elms's incidental music, some of which is on your vinyl. But this is the original master tape, so obviously you need to keep that safe and sound because that's the original.
Do you have anything that will play those?
I don't. I have played them because a friend of mine has a player that does that. Obviously, they've all been since remastered and are on the network soundtrack, like the vinyl you have and the CD set. So there's nothing new on the tapes, but these are the original tapes that the music was recorded on.
Wow. Gotta take good care of those.
Unlike you've got a vinyl player and you can play your music. I've just got to sit here and look at some pieces of plastic in a box.
Well, I'm sure you can get one too.
Yeah. Yes, no, I do have a vinyl player, and I have the CD version as well. But I thought people might like to see what the original tapes look like.
Oh, yeah, that's amazing. I have 2 turntables, but they both need either a stylus or a new needle.
Oh, no. So not only can you not watch your new Blu-rays, you also can't listen to your new vinyl.
I'm not sure I want to listen to the new vinyl. It's in perfect condition.
Yeah.
And I can't hear it on the show. So
yeah, that's very true.
I'm a bit of a dweeb when it comes to record collecting. Let's say hello to some folks in the audience. Hail Darius Munchausen. Herc130 says, I want answers. Hail Sherry. Hail Michael Beacon. Hi guys, running errands, so I won't be able to chat, but still listening when I can. I wouldn't want to seem unmutual. Ivan Ivanovich is here. LDG of Geeks and Joy. And Ivan Ivanovich says, I have my dad's mono hi-fi reel player.
Wow.
So there you go. I once found my dad's reel-to-reel player, but it was in the basement of my boyhood home, and I didn't have any control of, what happened to it, although I'm sure it was thrown out. So let's go ahead and discuss the episode. There are some interesting mentions of control and then Electric's control. I noticed the top hats and the sunglasses. I guess we'll get to that later. The second projection sounds like Devo, who wouldn't begin performing for another 7 years. The people in charge of the special effects and the sound effects were really before their time. And of course, kudos have to go to Ron Grainer for such an effective theme song. Why is number 12 in administration helping number 6? Is he actually on his side? He seems to be throughout the entire episode. Why does he give him the pass token and the deprogramming lecture to put in the projector? More on this later. Now, Rick, I know that you have some interesting tidbits for us about this, but I wanted to start out by mentioning that in the production of this episode, one of the major problems was that Patrick McGoohan fired the original director and asked Peter Graham Scott to direct it, but he was already directing something for the BBC, So McGowan phones up Sidney Newman, head of drama at the Beeb, and asks if he can have Scott for 2 weeks. And for some reason, Newman said, "Sure, of course you can, darling." So Scott, having worked with McGowan previously on Danger Man, capitulated, but was still thrust into the middle of the creative process with little to do with the episode other than to block out the actors and be the head man apart from McGowan. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Peter Graham Scott always maintains that the reason he was chosen is that he was quick and he was cheap, which were two things which McGowan really did need at that point, because you say the original director was cast aside. They needed someone quickly. And what's interesting about this episode, and it's a shame that Captain Cockney Spock is yet to join us, because he mentioned on an earlier episode that he feels that number 6 is very much Patrick McGowan himself, and that the character we're seeing on screen is McGowan himself amplified as a fictional character. And that's how Peter Graham Scott approached the directing of the episode. He had lunch with George Markstein, who he already knew, who was, of course, the script editor, and said, "Look, I don't really understand what's going on, George. I don't really understand the premise of this series. Can't get a handle on how to direct this." And George Markstein basically said, "Think of Patrick as being unhappy on Danger Man. He's resigned the role of Danger Man, and he now wants to do something different." And Peter Graham Scott said, "Of course, I can work with that." So he directed the episode on the basis that McGowan was playing himself as having been someone who'd resigned from something. And I think it works. I think the direction is actually quite good for this episode. I think it's an interesting episode.
Oh, I do too.
Yeah, written by Louis
Especially
Griefer.
Considering the all the changes to the set design that they had. You know, they had the 2 circular sets that they were constantly redressing.
Yeah.
And in this episode, there's lots of hallways.
Yeah. The budgets were low at this point, and they basically, like another episode, It's Your Funeral, they had a lot of stock footage of things like helicopters flying around. We really need to reuse as much of this footage as we can in the episodes. There's a lot of almost pointless helicopter shots, and by the same token, we can't really do much new sets. We need to reuse what we've got. So lots of corridors, as you say, a redressed green dome.
That hadn't occurred to me. I noticed at the beginning of the episode, I watched it twice, which I always do before the show. And I noticed at the beginning of the episode that there was, now that I think of it, gratuitous helicopter activity, sort of coming in and looking over Port Marion, which I assumed was the general landing. But now, of course, having seen it twice in a row, it was completely superfluous.
Yeah, it was. And that was John S. Smith was the editor on this episode, and he was given the task on this episode, and It's Your Funeral, to build as much as he could out of existing library footage, stock footage that they just kind of had that they could reuse for different things. And when we come to do It's Your Funeral, if I join you for that one, you'll see there's an awful lot of stock footage in that way, gratuitous shots of people water skiing and just kind of generally milling about and running around. And the same was true of sets. And this one was filmed back to back with A, B, and C. And the writer of A, B, and C, Anthony Skeen, basically wrote the episode around what they had in terms of the backlog at the studios. They had a kind of chateau set. Oh, I could do a French party in the chateau. We've got this set. I could use that. And it was the same for the general. It was, what can we do that's in the studio that doesn't involve building whole new standing sets? So they had a lot of scenes in the committee room, which, of course, as you quite rightly pointed out, is the green dome set redressed. We could have a lot of running up and down corridors, a lot of stuff in number 6's cottage, a fake beach with a couple of stock shots of people running along the beach and so on. And that's what they built the episode around. It was written by a gentleman called Louis Griefer, who had known George Markstein for many years. And it was actually Louis Griefer who first introduced George Markstein and Patrick McGowan. It was the mid-60s. Louis Griefer had been a journalist in the 1950s, working with George Markstein at little local newspapers like the Southport Guardian and so on. And in the mid-60s, Patrick McGowan wanted somebody to come along and help him refine scripts. So Louis Griefer, who knew Patrick and George, said, I'm going to introduce you to George Markstein. And that's how the two of them met in 1965. So when it came to The Prisoner being produced, George Markstein turned around to Louis Griefer and said, look, we need some writers that are kind of a bit off the wall for this new series. Would you write one? So Louis Griefer at that time, his two sons, Joshua and Adam, were in school, one doing O-levels, one doing A-levels, so what you would call high school and college. And he was getting concerned that there was too much rote learning. There was no, exploration that these students could do. It was all kind of, this is what you learn in this order, etc. So that's why
it's what we call learning for the test.
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right. And that's why the credited writer on this episode is called Joshua Adam, because that was Louis Griefer's two sons, Joshua and Adam.
Interesting.
And, Markstein,
I'm going to let you, Rick, I'm going to let you vamp, and I'll be right back. So please continue.
Okay, I will do. No problem. So, apparently George Markstein didn't particularly like the episode when he first read it. He wasn't that keen. But according to Louis Griefer, McGowan absolutely loved the episode, and I thought it was just his sort of thing. And it's one of the few episodes that in years later, McGowan actually went on to, when interviewed, talk specifically about this episode. He felt it was important. He felt that the word why, which obviously is important later on in the episode, I won't spoil anything for anyone in case they're watching along. He felt why was just as an important word in life as yes or no. So that's why the word why appears in the episode as to quite high importance. But Louis Griefer, when interviewed, said that McGowan absolutely really loved this episode, and it was his sort of thing. And I can see that. I can see that Patrick would have had things to say about the education system and about how it was kind of people being forced a viewpoint or forced certain information. Now, when it comes to history, it's very difficult to not teach that in a rote learning kind of way, because the dates of when this happened, dates of when that happened, you can't really interpret that. But I think McGowan felt it was important that education should be interpretive and that people should be asking questions, not just fed facts, but should be able to have interplay with the educators and ask questions and ask simply why.
Right. Which we'll come to later. This was just dropped off by the Amazon truck. And I usually do an unboxing episode, but since we're here, and it might have something to do with The Prisoner, I say let's go ahead and see what's inside. Might be prisoner related, might not be.
Yeah, give me a bit boring if it's just your sort of shampoo delivery, I must admit.
I'm excited either way. Oh, wow. Lots of interesting stuff. I don't know about you, but I'm a big fan of Halloween. It's my favorite holiday.
Okay.
So, it looks like I've got some Halloween fare, which isn't entirely off the mark, as they say. They even sent me special air from ancient Babylon. So let's see. We want to see if we can make this as relevant as possible. So let's take a look here. I have done a little Halloween movie shopping. This is a comedy called Haunted Honeymoon with Gene Wilder, who's one of my favorites. Let's see. And we'll watch Gil fumble. Oh, this is one I know you'll like. Aye, a little bit of modesty, Blaze.
I'll go wrong with a bit of Terrence Stamp.
We've got A Fistful of Dynamite.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great Western of the spaghetti variety. For a Few Dollars More, which of course comes after A Fistful of Dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the Peter Cushing Doctor Who and the Daleks.
Great.
And Invasion Earth 2150 AD.
Say, you need to have the sequel. You've got to have both.
Got to have both. I've seen them both, but not on Blu-ray. And I'm also a bit of a Peter Lorre fan. Like in Casablanca, you despise me, don't you? Actually, that got me a role in a play once because I used to do Peter Lorre. So we have Comedy of Terrors, which is Vincent Price, Peter Lorre, and Boris Karloff. Here is our Fistful of Dollars. Eugene O'Neill's The Iceman Cometh. Frank Langella. I'm a huge fan of Frank Langella. He has those wonderful dulcet tones, you know. In Diary of a Mad Housewife. The Producers, of course. And last but certainly not least, Vincent Price in The Last Man on Earth, which I personally think is the best interpretation of Richard Matheson's I Am Legend. Better than the Omega Man, better than the Will Smith movie, which Tracy Torme wrote, so he's a little upset with me about that. But hey, at least I'm honest. Well, no prisoner-related stuff.
That's a good haul you've got there.
Nice little haul, isn't it? Live unboxing.
Yeah.
But yes, what you were saying about schooling.
The post I got today was Bills.
Say again?
I said the only post I got today was Bills. I don't think I'll be opening them on air.
Oh, yeah.
Unless anybody would like
I just
to
throw those away. I think what you were saying about the schooling and the education system is very true. Although I've always thought of the UK as having a much better public school system than the United States. You know, it seems to me, I don't know if this is true, but it seems to me like people in England learn things like Latin and maths and, you know, just things of importance, history, things like that, at much higher levels in primary school than we do here in the States. And you can take a high school student from England and put them up against a college student in the United States, and they'll probably win, you know?
Okay. Yeah, I don't know.
That might not be true.
I have a lot of knowledge of the American system. I mean, I've got 3 kids, and they're all at different stages of the system. My daughter's at university at the moment. So I kind of see the positives of the system. I think things are slightly different now to maybe how they were in the 1960s, when this would have been written, when I think things were a bit more regimented and a bit more structured and a bit more strict. I think we allow kids a bit more leeway now to kind of ask questions and to learn that way than maybe 50 years ago.
Ivan Ivanovich has a good point. Interestingly, the general reminds me of how my first modern physics course was taught. Rapid fire memorization and regurgitation with no thought. And Herc 130 says, you have a point there, Ivan. And he says they had to do it that way so they wouldn't notice the untruths. The other day, Ivan and I were discussing Velikovsky's Worlds in Collision and his electric universe theory. and hail to Can. And let's get on with some of our ideas about the general. This episode clearly belongs before A, B, and C. It's Colin Gordon again, and he's the new number 2. There's really no way to rationalize that this works apart from the episode order being screwed up. In his previous appearance, the Colin Gordon number 2 was clearly very nervous right from the start, which works as well as a reference to his failure in this episode. In this one, he's totally confident, totally reliant on the general. They really couldn't be any more different. And I think this is the first instance that sticking to the original broadcast order screams out to the viewer as a mistake. But that's just an annoyance that affects the first few minutes of the episode. There's a bigger one that affects the final few minutes, but between those two annoyances is actually a very enjoyable episode, despite feeling lower stakes than the previous few weeks. The central premise of the episode asks us to take a leap of faith into silly science. And this seems to be the starting point for many a Prisoner episode. We've had water balloons that can capture people at sea and drag them safely to shore. We've had dreams being manipulated and projected onto a screen. We've had a doppelganger turning up without any explanation. And this week, we are expected to accept the ability to learn 6 months of degree-level study in 15 seconds by means of a form of electro-hypnotism. And silly as it is, I kind of like that idea. I mean, it would be very handy, but there's a problem with it. They just all parrot the same facts without engaging with what happened and why. And that's a million miles away from high school history, let alone degree level. But it would still be useful for absorbing the basics such as names and dates, but it's still all rote, just like you were saying before.
And it's interesting that if one wonders if the village or the government, however one wants to think of it that way, could they take that a step further, and that they're not just making you absorb historical facts, they're making you absorb beliefs. So, the next time you're sort of given that the hypno speed learn or whatever, you're suddenly thinking certain things. You suddenly have certain beliefs to fit a kind of to fit what the government want you to think or what the village want you to think. And it'd be interesting to know whether the village would have then taken that a step further. Was this just a test roadmap? Let's see if this works. Let's see if we can get people thinking certain things and believing certain things. If this works, if we can get them to know that, the Treaty of Adrianople was in September 1829, then can we then get them to do what we want?
Yeah, it absolutely does come off that they are using the history lesson as a test run for programming the population of the village. At least it did to me.
That's the impression I get as well. And I think it's well I think it's well put across. I think for a 45-minute episode, I mean, this story could have run over a couple of episodes, really. And if it was a modern sci-fi drama, it probably would. It'd probably be a 4-parter or something. I think it's well executed. You seem to have a gripe with the ending, which I'm sure you'll come to when you get to the ending. But I think that the sequences which kind of explain what's going on are all well put together, and they do keep you're not looking away wondering where this is going to go. You kind of are gripped into it, and it's one of those episodes where you're right. It hasn't got the depth of some of the earlier episodes. It hasn't really got the intrigue of some of the earlier episodes, but it's still a good episode nonetheless. Even though it is one of those ones that if it didn't exist, it wouldn't make any difference to the viewing of the series. It doesn't add anything to the story arc. Well, even though there particularly isn't one, but
it does make you think. All these episodes make you think, but This one's a little bit more sort of happy-go-lucky. That's not the right term, but, it's a little bit more fluff, I guess. So we're clearly in the realm of science fiction now. A 3-year degree in 3 minutes. Well, that's something. But number 6 is right when he tells number 12, nothing is impossible in this place. So maybe he can learn without all that tedious and useless schooling. So my main question is, what ploy will number 2 use this time? This is the rarely used overload the brain until the secrets spill out ploy, loosely based on Arthur Conan Doyle's theory that the brain is like an attic and can only house so much. And here number 2 shoves so much into number 6's brain that he hopes number 6 will tell him why he resigned. Although I noticed in this episode, he never asks him that. Did you notice that?
He doesn't, and one wonders why he didn't just ask the general that. Being that the general is the font of all knowledge and can tell you anything you want to know, it fed some basic bits of information. One wonders why he doesn't ask the general that. There are some plot flaws. If you analyze this episode, it's like a fishing net of holes. But the best way is not to
holes you could drive a starship through.
Yeah. What's your opinion on Colin Gordon? I really like him as a number 2. What did you?
I do too. I mean,
make of him?
In this episode, I think it's very early days. Number 2 says that he and number 6 are old friends, which might give credence to the idea that this is Colin Gordon's second attempt to break the prisoner, but I don't buy it. I think old friends merely means they've been in the village for a few weeks and even interacted, but no attempt has yet been made to break number 6 by this number 2. Because he still drinks milk like we saw in the earlier episode, I'm convinced it's the same person, but I think this is number 2's first time really putting number 6 through the ringer.
I totally agree. And if you watch this episode and watch A, B, and C straight up, so you can see there's almost a character development. Here he is confident and he's lost, and then you know then when you watch A, B, and C that he's on his last chance. He knows it screws up again. He's fired, and that's why you get that tension throughout A, B, and C. Not only to know what's going to happen to number 6, but each ad break, number 2 looking over at the big red phone, because he knows he's going to get the push. What the viewers might not know is in the opening sequence where it's, where am I? In the village. What do you want? Information. This is the only episode where number 2 doesn't say, I am the new number 2. What he actually says is, I am number 2. So that absolutely, for me, backs
that's
it up.
That's a dead giveaway, isn't it?
No longer the new number 2. He has been there before. And sorry, A, B, and C, I beg your pardon. In A, B, and C, he says, I am number 2, not I am the new number 2. So that absolutely tells me that he has been there before, i.e. in this episode, general, and that the general should come first and A, B, and C should come after. I mean, if you'd have been watching this in 1967 with 4 episodes in between, would you have kind of analysed it to that degree? Probably not. We do so because we love the series and because we've seen it before. And we want to kind of analyse the ordering of the episodes. But it's interesting.
And I think
it says, I am number 2 and not I am the new number 2.
As we're watching it, we're starting to put the puzzle pieces together as to where things actually go. And this is probably as good a place as any to play.
I will not make any deals with you. I've resigned. I will not be pushed, filed, stamped, indexed, briefed, debriefed, or numbered. My life is my own.
Is it?
Yes. You won't hold me.
And while that's not Colin Gordon, it certainly it almost makes me feel like he should say that every episode. But yeah, he's nowhere as nervous about what he's doing. The milk may indicate that he's stressed, but he's downright terrified in A, B, and C, which is he's clearly not here. And let's also consider that number 12 says that he's been there for quite a while. But just one episode ago, if we go by broadcast order, number 12 was number 6's double, not this guy. And if we conceive that these episodes are not in this order, this might predate A, B, and C by some time, possibly even predating the Chimes of Big Ben. Not to mention, when number 6 is uncovering the sculptures, we see some of those that are out in the grounds of the village, which begs the question, did the professor's wife sculpt all of them? What do you think?
Yeah, one assumes that it's I'd love to know what happened to those props, and I'm sure they've been destroyed long ago, but that would be a shame. I'd love to see those props. And yeah, I wanted to know one of the things that's frustrating about all the episodes of The Prison. This is not an insult to the series. I love the series, the greatest series. Sometimes you want to know the backstory of some of the characters, don't you? You never get that. You're often left wondering. I really want to know the story of the professor in this way. Because we never get to find that out.
Yeah, and when number 6 starts investigating what's really going on, the episode kicks into gear. The creepy statues under the cloths were fun, especially as one of them was Leo McKern, another was Colin Gordon, and the third was Patrick McGowan himself, which is never explained, never even mentioned. And I also spotted at least one that we saw in Arrival as the security statues on the perimeter of the village. Number six smashing the professor's fake head was a really shocking moment. Our tolerance and acceptance of violent imagery on television has moved on since the 60s, but I imagine that would have been an image of the professor's caved-in face, causing a lot of viewers to squirm in their seats at the time. You should take greater care of him, ma'am. He's gone to pieces.
Yeah. It's one of the episodes that definitely asks a lot of questions and you don't always get the answers. But that's what's so intriguing about the series as a whole, is that you get these little tidbits that you could have an hour discussion on these statues and what they mean, but there's no right or wrong answer to it.
Yeah, and the you should take greater care of him, ma'am. He's gone to pieces. It's a very Bond-like quip, isn't it? Mm. For the first time ever, number 6 actually seemed to have a genuine ally as well this week, and that needed to happen, I think. And I'm sure this is another symptom of the mixed-up order of viewing. It's become increasingly hard to believe that number 6 would trust anyone after all these repeated betrayals, and yet he has fallen for a double-crosser almost every episode from the start, despite seeming much too astute for that. In this episode, number 12 really does help him, so it would have been useful to see that happening earlier in the run to make sense of number 6 being duped at other times.
Yeah, again, number 12, a bit like the professor and his wife. You want to know what the backstory is there, don't you? You want to know why he's obviously frustrated with the village. He's obviously, he might even be a prisoner himself. We don't know. Is he just a kind of disgruntled civil servant trying to ruin things from the inside? Again, we don't know. Is he someone who joined the village with aspirations and then, as time has gone on, has realised that they're kind of up to no good and he can't countenance what's going on? We don't know. There's so many questions about this character. I think he is a genuine ally.
At the beginning of the episode, we see him running, like trying to escape, and this mob following him, right?
Well, that's the professor, isn't it? Yeah, he clearly wants to. The professor clearly wants to escape. He clearly doesn't want to be there. And which we talked about originally. They originally came there voluntarily, but they're clearly not, or he's clearly not there voluntarily now.
And one gets the impression that his wife is sort of playing along to keep him alive, really.
Yeah, which ultimately doesn't maybe go too well. Spoilers.
Yeah, spoilers. I loved the little hand that came out to snatch the passes and allowed number 6 through the doorway to the really silly part of the episode. It's actually an Addams Family bank that they put to use in this episode. The general turns out to be one of those massive 1960s computers, the same as the Old Man in the Cave episode of The Twilight Zone, which is based upon the short story The Old Man by Henry Sleeser. Though it was copyrighted in 1962, the story went unpublished until 1980. But that Twilight Zone episode is burned into my brain. It's one of my favorite episodes. It's actually an episode that Rod Serling wrote. Have you seen that episode?
I haven't. I haven't. I have to admit I haven't seen that one, or if I have, I've forgotten it. It sounds great.
Yeah. It's got, I think, James Coburn or Lee Marvin in the role. I always get the two mixed up. I think it's James Coburn. Yeah. He plays a major who is in charge of a small group of, military army men that come upon this community that's being told what water is okay to drink and what water isn't okay to drink because it's radiated with strontium-90, and what food is okay and what shouldn't be eaten. And they get along just fine when they follow the instructions of the Old Man in the Cave, but there's only one man that's allowed to go to visit the Old Man in the Cave. And when James Coburn comes, spoilers, to stir things up a bit, he riles up the community and says, we don't need this old man in the cave to tell us what's okay to eat and what's not okay to eat. And just like at the beginning of this episode, when there's this huge crowd running after the professor, in the Twilight Zone episode, the Old Man in the Cave, at the end, they decide to go against the wishes of the man that's kept them alive by being the go-between between them and the Old Man in the Cave. And they kind of mow him over, and they go to see what's going on with the Old Man in the Cave. And, it turns out to be one of these massive 1960s computers. So it's a very similar idea.
Great. It sounds really interesting. I have got a few series of the Twilight Zone. I haven't watched all the discs yet, so it might well be on one of the ones I have. There's a few Twilight Zone episodes that people refer to as being prisoner-esque. I think it's because the writers, again, they have a kind of bent of mind, don't they, like the prisoner writers do, to kind of just sort of go slightly outside the box. The general computer, I have to say, it's one of the few. There's not many times watching The Prisoner that things are dated. I think it's clear to say that the supercomputer is one of them, because nowadays, obviously, it would fit on your desk rather than take up an entire wall and
right,
rather than blow up.
Well, of course, at the time,
it's got a problem.
You people didn't know that.
Yeah, no, of course not. No, it's one of the few times where they predicted the future and got it slightly amiss. Everything else, obviously, they've got spot on.
Yeah, I mean, the Twilight Zone and The Prisoner both, although they were separated by, over a decade, both predicted a lot of interesting things. And I think both got past the censors by telling morality plays that had a science fiction aspect to them. So we didn't necessarily think of them as, or the censors anyway, the network censors didn't necessarily think of them as anything to complain about. Whereas if it had just been modern day, they wouldn't have gotten past the censors. Same thing with the original Star Trek. The morality play is told through the lens of aliens on other planets where they have problems, but of course we on Earth have gotten through racism and sexism, and we're sort of a post-scarcity society. There's no more illness, that kind of thing. So they all kind of have a little bit in common. Has its
own allegorical way of telling the same thing. Yeah, it's all the same fable, isn't it? Just told through a different lens. So
I think that the three shows
about the allegory of life through a man
are
religion.
Kind of in the same Venn diagram.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for that, Cardinal. I think I agree with what you've just been saying there. And especially, Star Trek, particularly the original series, almost every week is a different fable, isn't it? A different allegory for life, where, this planet really, it's the Nazis they're talking about. This planet really, it's kind of, Martin Luther King they're talking about. And the Prisoner does the same thing, but on kind of a deeper, more allegorical way. But it's the same thing. It's telling you a fable about, look at the world around you. This is what's happening. And the Prisoner does it brilliantly. I don't think anybody's done it since as well as the Prisoner did it. And the Twilight Zone, in a not quite the same way, was doing a similar thing. It was telling these allegories through science fiction.
Yeah, foundational television. And when I was pretty young, I think I was in junior high school, the Twilight Zone was on at 11 o'clock at night when I was long supposed to be asleep. And I just couldn't not watch it. So I watched it every night, every school night. And of course, every school day the next day, I was, I'm so tired. But it was worth it. It was a schooling, perhaps more important, and in relation to this episode, than what I was learning at school, because I was learning how to write morality plays. I was learning how to write good science fiction. The Twilight Zone had great writers like Charles Beaumont and George Clayton Johnson and William F. Nolan, who's a buddy of mine. And, Rod Serling went to Ray Bradbury famously and said, I've been greenlit for this show called The Twilight Zone, but I'm not really a science fiction writer, and I can't do it by myself. Do you have any advice? And he was hoping that Ray Bradbury would write some shows for him, but instead he said, well, as it turns out, I have this little cadre of science fiction writers that I've been mentoring. They'll be perfect. And so O.C. Rich and William F. Nolan and George Clayton Johnson and Charles Beaumont and others, wrote foundational science fiction shows for his series, like The Howling Man, which was a great Charles Beaumont story about capturing the devil. And these monks have this howling man in a cage, and a man comes to their monastery, and it's, blizzard conditions outside, and he's knocking at the door and saying, I'm going to freeze to death, and please let me in. And no, you can't come in. And finally they let him in. And this is the period in between World War I and World War II. So they let him in so he can warm up, and then they're going to send him on his way. And there's this howling man in a cage, and he asks one of the monks, who's got the big staff and the long beard and all that, what's with this howling man? And he says, whatever you do, do not let him out. Do not listen to him. He is a liar, and etc. and he spoilers. He ends up, going over to this plaintive, howling man and asks him, what have you done that's so horrible that they have you locked in this cage? And of course, the howling man spins this tale of, they beat me and, all this awful stuff. And he ends up letting him out of the cage. And of course, then he grows horns and a beard and goat legs, and he runs out, and World War II commences. And then the monks tell him who he's released upon the world and how long it took them to catch him the first time. Just brilliant television like that.
That sounds absolutely fascinating. I'm going to check out whether is that available? Has that been released, or is it one of those things that's?
Oh yeah, it's on Blu-ray.
Okay. Oh well, I'm going to look out for that. That's not something I've seen. I'll tell you what was really interesting. What you were talking about was how watching The Twilight Zone, although it left you tired the next day, it taught you almost more than what school was teaching you. And that's exactly how I felt about The Prisoner. I was 10 years old when I first saw The Prisoner. It was 1983, and it was not shown until 11 o'clock at night. Now, when you're 10 years old, it's difficult to kind of, Mom, can I stay up late, please? And fortunately, she said yes, and I got to watch The Prisoner. And The Prisoner taught me
lucky you.
About life. The Prisoner taught me more about life than 16 years of or 18 years of schooling ever did. It really did. I mean, yes, of course, I needed to learn to read and write and do maths and learn science and history and all the things, geography and all the things we need to learn. Of course we do, because we need to go out and get a job and whatever. But it taught me more about life than school ever did. School didn't teach me anything about life and about the world around me, to understand it.
And the same thing here. And especially if you consider that the Twilight Zone had, 5 seasons. So, gosh, 136 episodes, I think. Something like that. Or maybe it's 165 episodes, but there are a great deal, many very good episodes of The Twilight Zone, like the one I just described, than fair to middling ones or poor ones. Every show has shows that are standouts and maybe not as good as some others. But
the clunkers aren't important. When people talk to me about, let's use Star Trek. That's come up a few times in our conversation. That's a great example. I don't care that the empath is well, to my mind anyway, dreadful. That doesn't matter because the next week you've got City on the Edge of Forever. It doesn't matter. The clunkers don't matter. And the same is true of The Prisoner. People say, oh, well, I don't really like Do Not Forsake Me, or I don't really like The General. That doesn't matter. It's the whole. It's what you get from the best episodes and what you take away from those that's important. It doesn't matter that the occasional episode isn't as good or doesn't stand up as well as other episodes. That's not important. And I guess the same is absolutely true of The Twilight Zone. You're going to have some episodes which aren't as strong, but that shouldn't take away from the brilliance of the rest of the episodes.
Right. Yeah, and doesn't in most cases, I find.
Someone asked me a couple of questions in the chat. Would you mind if I answered them, Cardinal? Would that be okay?
No, let's go ahead and take some questions from the chat.
I don't want to
back up a little bit here. Let's see.
It's your show.
So we're saying hey to Cam. No, it's okay to take questions in our second hour, and we're 59 minutes and 28 seconds in, so that's okay. Ivan Ivanovich says when you want to manipulate opinions, the easiest way is to manipulate perceived truth.
Well, that one.
Hale, Carl Fruins, says, despite being a studio-made episode, the main theme and conclusion is one of my favorites. And Ivan Ivanovich points out, the story I heard was that The General was filmed before A, B, and C, and that they held Colin Gordon over for the latter. To do that, they had to change the ending of The General.
No, A, B, and C was filmed before The General.
Yeah.
Absolutely was filmed first. A, B, and C was filmed first, which, again, is probably a reason why it was shown first, even though it doesn't make canonical sense for A, B, and C to be first, as we've already discussed. It was definitely filmed first. I'll probably just check the filming dates, actually, so that Yvonne has it completely correct. So let me just check.
And Michael Beacom says, "Hi, guys. Taking a quick keyboard break. I think this one should be before A, B, and C, but after the Schizoid Man. All of them came before the Chimes of Big Ben, I think."
I think he's
Carl
on the third
Fruns,
one. I wouldn't necessarily put it before Chimes of Big Ben, I must admit.
Carl Fruns says, "Many, one after another, villagers can share / have the same number, like they're not millions of John, Wans, Zhangs, and Bambis in this life. Names and numbers are not individual." Although I think that's kind of the point of the show, is we are being reduced to numbers. Michael Beacom is prepping for the Halloween party. Michael Beacom says, "Rick, I think they made it obvious. The professor is no longer a willing guest of the village. This reflects the government practice of cherry-picking useful patents for their own purposes." And Ivan Ivanovich says, "James Whitmore Jr." I don't know what that's in reference to.
No. Yeah, just to confirm.
And then he says, "The guy I'm thinking of isn't Whitmore. It's a similar character actor named John Anderson."
Yeah, just to confirm, A, B, and C was filmed first, late January, early February 1967. The General started shooting on Monday, the 27th of February. So that's the that's just to confirm that the question that we had before. Do carry on, Cardinal, with the comments.
So Carl Fruntz asks, "Hey Rick, has the man who played number 12, John Castle, been to any prisoner events or conventions? I know he's still with us, living in the UK."
He is. There's not many guest stars of the prisoners still alive. I'm sure we could probably count them on two hands, I would say. He is still alive. He's still acting. He was in RoboCop. To give some good American things that he was in. He was in RoboCop. Just off the top of my head, one thing that was in. He's never been to a prisoner event. He's never been to a convention. He always turns them down. Perhaps he hasn't been offered enough money. Who knows? But he always turns them down. And Eric Meibel, who was music editor on the series, went on to kind of direct and produce various bits of television. Bumped into John Castle at a stately home and said, "Oh, John Castle, my name's Eric Meibel. I'm a director. And when I was younger, I worked on the same program as you called The Prisoner." And John Castle literally looked at him and walked off and wouldn't discuss the series. So whether that means he had a bad experience on the series, who knows? But no, he's never accepted any invitation to do any type of event or interview related to The Prisoner.
Very interesting. Ivan Ivanovich says, "John Castle played Posthumus Agrippa in I, Claudius, one of my favorite series."
What a great series. George Baker's in that too. The second.
I love I, Claudius.
Yeah, fantastic.
You know, I'll tell you, Rick, I had an idea that I'm sure won't happen at this point. Around the time that Derek Jacobi did Doctor Who and played the Master for one episode, It occurred to me that he was actually old enough that he could go back and film the scenes of I, Claudius when he was older, and then they could also use him for the scenes where, I mean, I, Claudius is kind of a black box play. It all happens in one room. And there are outlets on either side that go to the Coliseum where the gladiatorial games are happening. And have you seen Spartacus, the TV series?
Oh, not the TV series. No, sorry, I've only seen the original movie. You know, the Kirk Douglas movie.
Yeah. So in the TV show, there are these huge amounts of people, and they do, insert shots and close-ups of, people, and then they do these large, software-based shots of people that are all moving and everything, sort of like in Lord of the Rings, but that they could use that sort of thing to make I, Claudius more interesting to the current generation, the demographic of 18 to 24-year-olds, and replay it and remake it a little bit. And I think it would be worth the effort.
I mean, that would be great. I mean, I don't know how you would organize that, but that would be fantastic.
You just have to have somebody at the BBC, take charge of it. It was a BBC show, right?
Now, just a very quick question for you. Who wrote the theme tune to I, Claudius, Cardinal Sin?
Ron Grainer?
No, you're close. Wilfred Josephs. Composers on the Prisoner soundtracks. You were very close.
Interesting.
So
it's now, the record is now covered up with Blu-rays and DVDs, so. Let's see. Carl Friends says, Rick, was the 1983 airing the first full rebroadcast of The Prisoner, or did UK channels run it frequently during the 1970s?
Now, this is a good question. 1983 on Channel 4 was the first time since 1966, 67, 68 that it was what is called networked, where every house in the country had the episode that week to watch. However, throughout the 70s, every region of the UK, somewhere in the UK, The Prisoner was on in about 1976, 1977, 1978. Somewhere in the UK was showing it. There's a guy, I've forgotten his name, but during the 70s, of course, it was very difficult to get a video recorder, wasn't it? They were like, they were very expensive, big box things, top loader, usually. There was the Betamax. And he used to travel. He used to book hotel rooms depending on who was showing The Prisoner that week. So he'd travel around the country with his VCR, book a hotel room, plug it into the back of the TV or whatever, and videotape The Prisoner until he'd gone around the country and got all 17 episodes. He wanted them that much.
Wow.
He'd go around the country. Oh, they're showing A, B, and C in Gloucestershire this week. I'm going to book a hotel down there. But yeah, the late 70s, the Prisoner was shown across the UK, but not everywhere at the same time. So 76, you'd be in Wales. 78, you'd be in Manchester or whatever. 83 was the first time.
It sounds like the sort of thing I would have done if I'd had the money.
Yeah, same here. When I was in 1977, I was 4, so I think they had the advantage of me age-wise there. But that was a good question from Carl. Yeah, 83 on Channel 4 was the first time it was networked, shown same time every week for everyone in the country. The only time that ever happened.
And you and the captain saw it at the same time.
It's brilliant, isn't it, to think that we were both watching it at the same time. Exactly.
Yeah. I only wish he were here today with us. Cam says, Cardinal Sin, The Howling Man sounds really good. I haven't seen that one yet. I can really recommend that. It used to be the Sci-Fi Channel before they rebranded themselves Stiffy. They would do a Twilight Zone marathon every New Year's. So from New Year's Eve morning until New Year's Day night, they would show all the Twilight Zone episodes that they could. And I don't know if they still do that because I cut the cord a decade ago. But certainly you can buy the Blu-ray discs and just have a feast because it's one of the greatest TV series ever. Carl Fruns has a question for you. Okay. Rick, if Mr. Castle doesn't want to play, who were some of the best guests you saw or interviewed at Prisoner events?
Wow. That's a question that could take all day to answer because there's so many people. Carl organized some conventions himself, which were wonderful in Seattle in recent years. And one of the people that he had there was, funnily enough, someone who didn't enjoy working on The Prisoner. It was a lady called Annette Andre, who starred in the episode "It's Your Funeral." You probably know her as Randall and Hopkirk Deceased. She was the lead, one of the lead characters in that series.
Love that show.
She's lovely, and she was in the Avengers. She was in the Saint. She was in the Persuaders. She was in so many, great shows of the era. She's always delightful company, even though when she talks about The Prisoner, she doesn't have many nice things to say, because her and Patrick didn't get on. But do you know what? There's so many actors, and it's great that actors were in The Prisoner, but to them it was just a couple of days' work. I always find you get the most interesting information from the backstage people, from the cameramen, from the crew, from people that were there for 18 months and lived and breathed the experience. I've always found they're almost better guests and better company, because they've got 18 months worth of stories about how the show was made, about the little intricacies of it, which an actor who was just kind of doing a couple of days acting 50 years ago, they don't tend to remember too much. So I'm
surprised at the amount of directors and, like you said, the people that worked with Patrick McGoohan more closely, the writers and directors, had so many wonderful things to say about working with Patrick McGoohan. Like Tracy Torme said, at the beginning, he's very gruff and sort of has this, attitude, but then, once you disarm him, he's a very sweet gentleman, and once he understands that you're serious about The Prisoner, then he kind of becomes more approachable. Ivan Ivanovich says, I, Claudius, includes very early appearances of Bernard Hill and John Rhys Davies, which is true. And he goes on to say that Peter Bowles, who's in A, B, and C, is also in I, Claudius as Caracatus.
He is, isn't he? And as George Baker's in it, there's a few Prisoner actors that pop up in this would be interesting. Someone could put together a list. Shame we haven't got any elves who can go and find out these information.
Yeah,
using
even other science fiction actors, people that were in Excalibur, Star Trek: The Next Generation, etc. You've got John Hurt, Patrick Stewart, so many wonderful actors in I, Claudius. Cam says, I love I, Claudia, both the book and the BBC production. There's a second book that is good as well, but the name escapes me at the moment. And Carl Fruns says, Rick, if the series was first rebroadcast nationally in 1983, when was the first year that episodes came out on VHS?
Oh, I couldn't answer for the States. I don't know what year the MPI, I think, wasn't it, that did the original the VHS release in the States. In the UK, they did a very strange thing in 1982. A company called Precision decided they weren't going to bring out the whole series on episode by episode. What they did is they picked two random episodes and edited them together as a movie. A lot of early VHS companies did that with TV shows. We had Arrival and Schizoid Man edited together as a movie. We had Many Happy Returns and I think A, B, and C edited together as a movie. And they did 4 of these, which meant that 8 episodes were released, and they never did any more. And this was in 1982. The first time the whole series was released on VHS was 1985, 86. A company called Channel 5 brought them out here in the UK. But I think MPI in America might have beaten them to that.
Yeah, I think so. I remember watching The Prisoner with a friend of mine. We would watch an episode of The Prisoner and then a movie every week. And this would have been, mid-80s. I don't know for sure. 85, 84. Maybe something like that. Maybe 83. But Yeah. Ivan Ivanovich says, Cam, it's called Claudius the God. Have both of them on the shelf. Of course he does. Cam says, yeah, the Sci-Fi Channel has really changed. It used to be great. It did. And also to Yvonne, thanks. I've got so many books that I've had to store a lot of stuff. No room, sadly. Yes, that's a nice problem to have a lot of books.
It's better to have too many than not enough.
Yes, always better to have too many than not enough. Of course, what number 2 says about the general being so effective is correct. The general does remove the years of tedium of memorizing from rote, but also, of course, allows for the programming of anything into the minds of the students watching the projection. 6's defeat of the general is laughably easy, leaving aside the strangeness of why number 6 is allowed to ask his question without anyone checking first to see what it was. The question is simply, why? And this is the same sort of logical fallacy that Kirk would use on Nomad and other computers in Star Trek. So, high marks for parallel evolution of the two shows, and not for the first time, but it's still nonsense. When computers don't understand or can't compute programming, they just spit out syntax error if you're lucky. But again, most people didn't know that in the 60s. So what we do know of the professor is that he lectures as though his life depends on it, which it probably does. But when number 6 is standing over the professor and decides this is a wax person, he's taking a hell of a risk. What if he were wrong? He could have bludgeoned a sleeping man to death. But more importantly, why was there a wax dummy of the professor there in the first place? It goes completely unexplained and not even mentioned.
Yeah.
And then let's observe what happens with number 12. Number 2 is feeding the general information which he seems to already know the answer to. And number 12 betrayed him, but before he gets to see if the general will give him the information he already knows, number 6 feeds a question into the system which destroys the thing completely. So was number 6 actually trying to save number 12? Did he finally find an ally? It's a shame that with all those lectures, the professor never taught anybody anything about electricity, or number 12 might still be alive today. And I have to ask one glaring thing about number 12's information to number 6. He provides means to get into the town hall, but says nothing about attire. How does number 6 know to wear the glasses, the sunglasses, and the top hat? Why do they need these articles of clothing? Did he knock someone out to get that attire? They take them off in the meeting room. Is it supposed to be protection from the programming of the projector? This totally goes unexplained and unmentioned. Do you have any thoughts on that, Rick?
We said this at the beginning, didn't we? That there's so many parts of this that we don't get to see. We assume it all happens off camera or whatever. We never get an answer to that. We can have a guess. I can only assume that at some point, number 12 and number 6 had another conversation that we don't see, where he gave him a bit more information to add on to the information he'd already given him. But that's just guesswork on my part. It'd be interesting to see. Yeah. But if these had ever been novelized, we get the Doctor Who novelizations, don't we, where they go into a bit more depth about the characters and about what's gone on that we don't see on screen. It would have been really interesting if the writers of the Prisoner episodes had done novelizations of their episodes, so they could have explained all these little nuances, who these characters were, how this particular scene came to happen, because we don't see the linking scenes and what just happened. That would have been really interesting, but we don't. So we're just guessing like anybody else, aren't we?
Yeah.
Did you overall like the episode, Cardinal? Did you enjoy it overall? I know we've kind of it's natural to kind of pick holes in the bits that don't work. Overall, did you enjoy it?
I did. I thought it was fun to watch. I found it, as we've been saying, it had plot holes big enough that you could drive a starship through. But overall, it was an interesting break from what we've seen so far. And I think that that's important, because this was an episode in which we didn't really see number 6 abused. We didn't see him, drugged or
no, he didn't
otherwise.
He didn't try and escape.
He didn't try to escape. That's
they didn't
right.
try and find out why he resigned. All the things which make the series what it was are kind of missing from this episode. We don't see Rover. I'm pretty sure we don't. Just off the top of my head.
Rover's not in this episode.
It's almost as though they said we need a break from everything that we're trying to do here. So rather than escape of the week, they're trying to get information. Rover brings him back. Let's do something completely different. And I think there's a couple of times that happens in the series, and this is one of them. I think it's executed quite nicely. It's like I said earlier, it's one of those episodes which, yes, if it didn't exist, we probably wouldn't be thinking, if only there was an episode that dealt with this. But it's great that it's there, and I enjoy it. Yeah,
me too. I agree. I think it's a filler episode, but it's still an interesting one to watch. It was more fun.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And as you said earlier, it does deal with some interesting themes.
Yeah, and being that The Prisoner is a show that really wants you to think and think for a long time afterward, I think this is a nice break, because it doesn't ask that of you.
Yeah, it has something to say. It's obvious what it is that they're saying. You don't need your brain to explode like some of the episodes possibly make you do. I agree with you. I think it's a really nice little addition, and it's one of those, as you say, coupled with A, B, and C, it could probably go anywhere in the run. It could be a fairly early episode. It could be a fairly late episode. I think it's fairly nebulous in that regard, isn't it, as to where it fits. I think we're right that it must go with A, B, and C, and should go before it. I think we're universal on that. But it could go anywhere. It could go early or late, as A, B, and C could. He kind of seems fairly well settled in the village, doesn't he? But he hasn't quite got to the point where he's got the total upper hand on everything. Yes, you could call the end of the episode here with the General and A, B, and C a victory for him, but it's a struggle for him to get to that victory. It's not all plain sailing like in some of the later episodes.
And this is really the first real victory for number 6, followed by his second in the earlier broadcast episode. Going back to the theory about timing, it makes more sense now that A, B, and C would follow this episode. Number 2 introduces number 6 to the General, having no inclination that number 6 will find a way to destroy it. But before that introduction, he asks off screen, why did number 6 resign? To which the full range of information the General might have suggested selling out. But again, we're not privy to that. It might even given number 2 potential sources or an unknown third like A, B, and C. So number 2 loses the General in this story, but is given a second chance to drug number 6 to find out to whom he was selling. And because that data was already in hand, number 2 would only get one more chance. And this would explain number 2's heightened anxiety throughout A, B, and C, and why he's given a second chance to begin with. And it would also explain why, when that gigantic red phone rings in A, B, and C, number 2 looks so terrified. Both of his plans have failed, and there's no recovering from that.
Absolutely. It's anyone that says the episodes need to be the other way around, that makes no sense at all. That he would have such a failure, be so nervous in A, B, and C, have a failure, and then be cocky the next minute. That wouldn't happen. You're cocky first. He's brought down a peg or two. Probably managed to persuade number 1 to give him another chance, because it wasn't my fault. Number 12 was a double agent or whatever, double crossed us. Wasn't my fault. The professor was unstable. Give me another chance. He's given another chance, and he's nervous as anything about it. And you're right. The milk drinking gets more as well, doesn't it? In A, B, and C. He's clearly got an ulcer or something by that point.
Yep.
Absolutely. I concur completely with what you're saying about the ordering here. Not that it matters. We can still enjoy the episodes the other way around, but I think they make much more sense that A, B, and C follows what we've just been talking about.
And I think by the time we're done, we'll have a proper understanding of which order these episodes should go in. Or, as I'm sure you already have such an idea.
Well, I have my own personal order, but we said this, and Tracy said it all along. The only thing that's clear is that it doesn't really matter, and that as long as you have the first episode first and the last 2 episodes last, I mean, you could argue that the first
anything
episode
goes
also follows the last episode. It does. Anything goes. I think we will have a general agreement by the end as to which episodes maybe are early ones, which ones are late ones, which ones need to go before certain ones. But there's still so much I bet will still be open. If we all did a kind of blind thing where we all wrote down our order without telling anybody else what it was and then compared, there'd be so much in common, but I bet there'd still be differences as well. And that's what makes the series.
I think that we would have a lot of them in common, yes, but several of them would be out of place with each other. Yeah,
I think you're exactly right. I think that would be a really interesting experiment. Hoping that I can make the last episode, and we should do that at the end as a kind of.
I agree. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Although the last episode, I don't think we'll have much room for discussion after the last episode. There's so much to talk about there.
Number 6 is more or less helped and allowed to destroy the general in this episode, and it's a rare win for him. Next up is Many Happy Returns, so I hope everyone will be here for that, especially Tracy and, of course, Captain Cockney Spock, seeing as he is the co-host of this show. And I do want to, of course, give everybody a chance to take a look at the unmutual.co.uk, your website.
Thank you so much. It's very kind of you to give it a plug.
This is where
today actually about a new book that's coming out about spy films, which includes the McGowan film I Station Zebra. So if people go on there today, there's some hot news on a new book that's coming out. Just pre-ordering at the moment. So is
there anywhere on the website that we can find it?
Yep, right at the top there where it says latest news. The top news.
I Spy. Yeah, I noticed that.
There we go.
Fans of Patrick McGowan's I Station Zebra movie role and fans of the 60s spy movie genre generally will be excited to read about a forthcoming book on the subject, Guns, Girls, and Gadgets, 60s spy films uncovered by renowned film and TV historian Michael Richardson, comes highly recommended by the Unmutual website and includes an entire chapter on the making of the classic McGowan and Rock Hudson submarine epic. With over 314,000 words across over 700 pages, boy, that's a doorstopper. The book is the ultimate account of the making of 50 spy movies from the 60s. In addition to I Station Zebra, all the James Bond, Matt Helm, Man from U.N.C.L.E., Harry Palmer, Bulldog Drummond, and many more films are covered. To pre-order it at a discounted £7.99, visit Publisher's Coit website here.
There we go. So there's a bit of breaking news there.
Media Limited.
Thank you for.
Well, that looks fascinating.
There's more. Yeah, so there's a good, but as you say, it's a doorstopper. So I apologise to people in the States that you might need to sell your house to pay for the postage. That's the problem with these big packages, isn't it? It's not necessarily
it'll be available via Amazon, I'm sure. Oh, the Derek
That's a
Flint
good point.
films.
Yes,
Yeah. I wonder if Modesty Blaze will be part of that group.
Oh, if you just under there, I think there's a list somewhere of all 50 films. Is there anywhere there for that Spies book where it says click here for more information? If
I bet there is.
I'm sure there's a list of all 50 films there. Modesty Blaze, I'm
click
sure
here for more details and to pre-order.
At the bottom of the page, I'm sure all 50 films are listed.
Oh, yeah, it does. Book contents, 50 chapters, Dr. No, From Russia with Love, all the Bond films, The Spy with My Face, Where the Spies Are, The Spy Who Came In From the Cold.
19 Modesty Blaze.
Yep, right there.
So there we go. You were quite right.
Yeah. One Spy Too Many. Third, The Man from U.N.C.L.E. film. One of our spies is missing. Fourth, The Man from U.N.C.L.E. film.
You never talked about The Man from U.N.C.L.E. on this show. I really like The Man from U.N.C.L.E. Are you a fan?
Oh, me too. Big fan. I've always been a fan of course, now I can't remember his name. Not Robert Vaughn.
David McCallum.
David McCallum. Yeah. I wrote him a letter when I was very young, when The Invisible Man was on.
Oh, and, great version of The Invisible
Man. Received an autographed publicity black and white photo of him.
Oh, wonderful. One of his earliest roles, funnily enough, was in a film called Hell Drivers, which was one of Patrick McGowan's earlier roles.
Yep. Big fan of Hell Drivers.
And still with us, of course, David McCallum, which is always nice to know that.
Yeah, still on NCIS as far as I know.
Oh, wow, really? He's still...
I think so.
Fantastic. Oh, great.
Yeah, he's been on 17 seasons or something like that.
Wow. Oh, good for him. Good for him.
Yeah, I mean, so this is a very nice book to look after. I'm going to make sure to
hopefully that's
keep that up so I can pre-order that. We also want to plug Captain Cockney Spock and put his channel into the chat here. So we'll do that. Please subscribe to Captain Cockney Spock, who stayed up so long he, I'm sure, just fell asleep and couldn't make it. We're all human.
Yeah, I dread to think what time it is in New Zealand.
Yeah. And Ivan Ivanovich says Lockwood West, who played the camera shot manager in Do Not Forsake Me, Oh My Darling, has a bit part in I, Claudius. Michael Beacom says, had to jump back. Regarding David McCallum, he is a great guy. Got to spend some time with him during a Great Escape film event. It's terrific when you meet a celebrity, and he is terrific in person.
Absolutely.
That's quite true.
Yeah, and
absolutely.
Equally,
and of course,
equally is disappointing when you meet somebody who turns out not to be a great guy, because that can happen too.
Yeah. You know, the only person that I've heard that about, and I'm not unhappy to say so, is he played the Incredible Hulk on TV.
Lou Ferrigno.
Yeah, my brother is a professional actor, and he went to a convention where Lou Ferrigno was charging, I think, $100 an autograph, and he said he was a total dick. But other than that, you know, you go to Star Trek conventions and see people like the Captain's Woman in Mirror Mirror, Barbara Luna. And she was amazing. She was so nice, still very beautiful, and happy to sign autographs and take photos and no charge, that kind of thing. And I wanted to mention, of course, that the Unmutual website is where I got my my Prisoner book, and this is, of course, by our good friend Rick Davey at the unmutual.co.uk, The Essential Guide. And as long as you buy the book, you also get this wonderful sort of a postcard or bookmark. Let's see if I can get it to show up there. And it has an ad for the Unmutual website for all the latest events, news, interviews, reviews, photos, merchandise, analysis, guides. www.theunmutual.co.uk, and there's a facebook.com/unmutual website. I did not know about that. So for fans of the Prisoner, Patrick McGowan, and Port Marion.
Twitter page and an Instagram page.
Say again?
You just type our mutual website on Facebook or if you type our mutual website on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, there are pages for the website on that as well to keep you updated.
I will definitely sign up for that
with the latest news and whatever.
And let's see.
Very kind of you to plug my pairs.
Of course, very kind of you to be here. Cam says, yes, the man from U.N.C.L.E. Love that show, too. McCallum isn't on NCIS any longer. Big loss. He was still great. And Michael Beacom says, we did not know, but McCallum had sprained his ankle on NCIS the night before he flew into our event and didn't tell anyone. He was in pain, but said nothing as it was a tribute for vets. Wow. That's
great. Then you'd love people like that. That's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic.
I hope at least he got some medical attention. That's hard to imagine. I mean, I've heard of
about hell drivers. I wonder if
I think there's also an account of something like that happening on Sorcerer, the William Friedkin film. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not. No.
They're driving over dirt roads and rutted roads. Must have been in World War I. A contingent of nitroglycerin, which of course is extremely volatile, and they have to get to a certain location in a certain amount of time. So it shares a few plot devices with Hell Drivers. But Hell Drivers is such a great movie because it's got Patrick McGowan and Sean Connery and the first Doctor, William Hartnell. Yeah.
Yep.
And just a great,
Sid
great
James,
film.
Stanley
Really
Baker,
love that.
So many great actors.
And Ivan Ivanovich says Sorcerer with a soundtrack by Tangerine Dream. I can't imagine that Tangerine Dream was around when Sorcerer was made, but that's possible. They have been around a long time, but Sorcerer was a long time ago. But I'll tell you what, if Ivan Ivanovich says it, it's more than likely true. So, and Cam says, David McCallum sounds like a real trooper. The Great Escape is still one of the great ensemble films ever made. And that's certainly true. Oh, and Ivan Ivanovich says, I have the album. So I guess he's right.
There you go.
Okay. Well, Rick, I don't want to keep you any longer than we have to. Thanks so much for being here. And next week, hopefully, we'll have the full contingent. Yeah, a lot of fun. And of course, next week
very much for
will
having
be.
Me, as always.
Oh, quite welcome. Thank you for being here. And Carl Friend says, "Cheers, Rick." Next week we will be.
Thank you, Carl, for your question.
Going through Many Happy Returns, and you can take a look at the viewing order that we're going through on this listing of this episode. So when we've wrapped up, you can just look at the information in the description box, and it will tell you what the viewing order is. I'm pretty sure it's the same viewing order as Amazon, and it's the same viewing order as the A&E 40th anniversary DVDs. Is that right?
Yeah. That sounds about right. It's the original UK the screening order that when the series was
the order of release. Yeah
Exactly.
Very good. All right, well, thanks again, Rick, and we will see you all next time. And for Captain Cockney Spock, Tracy Torme, Rick Davey, it's Cardinal Sin.